Okay, welcome to video 2. So in the last video we covered audio effects and we took a look into a few of the main popular ones. Now there are thousands and thousands of audio effects, but the ones that I covered are probably going to be the ones that you'll use the most at first. And they're also the most fun to use, and it's kind of just a good way to introduce you to what audio effects are and how they work. Now what I'm going to introduce you to as well today is automation and what automation is. So to show you automation, I'm going to jump into the arrangement view. So I'll hit tab. And I'll also just bring in an instrument here. So this piano is fine. I'll draw in a little clip here. Okay, very simple 4-bar loop here. So what is a simplified description of automation? Essentially, automation allows us to change values over time. So it allows us to manipulate certain things as we progress in the timeline, whether that be audio effects or values inside of instruments, whatever it may be. Almost anything in Ableton can be automated over time. So when you're in this view here, and you see this solid color and this solid color blue here, you're not going to see the automation lines pop up and nothing's here because this is all solid. To get our automation, what we need to do is, there's a couple ways we can do it. So we can either press A on our keyboard, but you'll hear as I'm pressing A, I'm actually playing the key of the piano because I've got it armed, and I've also got this keyboard on. If I turn this keyboard off up here and hit A, now you'll see it's actually changed. So I'll switch it back, and now you see I've got this red line that's just popped up, and the color of this blue has gone slightly more transparent, and you'll see on the right here we get our two new options, two new boxes, also this little plus symbol, and this light pops up. So A is the shortcut to bring up our automation. If you have the keyboard on and you press A, obviously you're just going to press C on the note, on the piano roll. So if you don't want to turn off the keyboard and do it that way and hit A, you can just turn on this little automation mode over here, this little button. Okay, so I'm going to leave automation on. Now we get this red line. You'll see underneath here we got mixer and speaker on. So at the moment, what this red line is affecting is whatever's displayed in here. So at the moment we're affecting the mixer and we're affecting whether the speaker's on or off. So what I'm going to do is click here to put a dot on. You see the little plus symbol pops up when I hover my mouse over the red line. I'm going to click here, and I'm just going to go over to here, click another dot there, and I'm going to drag this dot down to off. You'll see we've got this solid red line now. It's not a dotted red line anymore, so that means we've got automation on the track. There's two little red dots here. That means we now have automation on those parameters. So we're affecting the speaker, we're affecting the mixer and the speaker on. And we also have a little red dot here because this is what the speaker on essentially is. So if I play this now from the start, yeah, you'll hear that once it gets to here, it plays, but then as soon as that turns off, you don't hear any more sound. That's because at this point here, we've automated the speaker to switch off. I'm going to get rid of this dot. To get rid of dots, you just click them once. So you can add dots anywhere along here. If you move your mouse slightly up or down, the whole line will highlight blue. That means you're moving this whole line up. I'm going to click to get rid of this. I'm going to click to get rid of this. One thing I want to note is never automate the speaker on and off or this volume here. And I'll explain that as we get to a later stage, but for now, just don't automate any of this stuff here. You'll notice as I click there on that volume, it actually changed what was in here. If I click this, you see speaker on pops up. As I turn it on and off, you'll see that line jumps between on and off. And if I click on the volume, you'll see that track volume pops up. So now instead of on and off, when we hover our mouse over the top, we get 0 dB. I'm going to click a dot here to mark this point here at 0 dB. And go to the beginning. Click and drag all the way down to negative infinite, which is essentially no sound. And same thing on the other side. So let's see what this is doing now. So yeah, as we predicted and as it shows here, volume starts at nothing, rises to 0 dB, and goes back down to nothing. You can get quite creative with what you actually automate in Ableton, and it can really open up new doors for you in producing your tracks. You can honestly add as many little dots in here as you want. So if you wanted it to rise up slower, you could add in more dots here and kind of draw a curve in, and then you could leave it at a high volume, and now it'll rise up slow and then slowly fade out. A little hard to hear in that sound. Let me move this up. So instead of having to move these two dots up separately, if I hover my mouse slightly above or below, I get that solid blue line. Then I can move those two dots up together. So I'll do something like this. Hopefully you can hear that a little better. So you can hear it takes a lot longer to rise up now to 0, and it also takes longer to fade out. Right, I'm just going to delete what I did there on the volume. So you can either highlight those dots, and make sure you highlight this bottom section. You'll see now it's split into 2 levels, whereas before it's just one. When I have automation off, and you can see the solid blue has come back. When I put automation on, Ableton splits these clips into 2 levels. So you see now there's a fine grey line up here. So this bottom half is the automation, and this top bit is the MIDI clip itself. So if I highlight down the bottom here, highlight all these dots and hit delete, I'm just deleting automation. I'm not actually deleting what's happening in the clip. If I did that with automation off, highlight this and deleted, you can see I've actually deleted what's happened with the clip. And you can still do that with automation on, but you have to highlight up here. So now I'm affecting the clip. Okay, so I've shown you speaker on and off and volume. I'm going to come down here to the actual piano instrument itself. And you'll see that Ableton makes these little macros automatically. So when I said anything in Ableton, or close to anything in Ableton can be automated, I actually meant it. So all these little fine-tuning controllers here, you'll see as I click each one, I'll click this first one, and you'll notice up here, it's changed to grand piano and key noise, which is exactly what I selected. If I click this one, you'll see it's sustain noise up here now. And you'll just notice it change as I click each control. So instead of having to find the control through here, because it would just be a mess and close to impossible. I mean, if you had to figure out exactly what you wanted to automate and you had to go through all this and then through all these, what you can do is actually just click what you want to change in here, anywhere on the instrument or the audio effect, whatever it may be. You click on it and it'll bring it up here for your automation. So I'll show you with an audio effect now. Let's take a look at the reverb since we already looked into that. I'll drag this in after my instrument. Now if I click on dry wet, you'll see we got dry wet up here, and it automatically picks the reverb for us. So again, as I click through these, you'll see it change up the top. Literally anything can be automated and changed over time. So Ableton gives us so much flexibility in that way, and so much creative power that, just when you thought that music production was starting to seem more simple, this kind of thing just adds a whole nother layer. But it's only as complex as you want to make it. So if you just want to automate some simple things over time, that's super easy. If you want to really go in and finely detail each thing as your track progresses over, for the full length of however long it is, that's going to take a lot of time and effort. So it's basically as simple or as complex as you make it. So I'm going to show you here with the reverb quickly. Just zoom in. I'm going to select the dry wet, so I'm going to click on that. I'm going to put a dot here in the middle at 55%, and then drag this one down to 0. Click and drag here down to 0. Actually, I'll push this up to 100. So let's see how this sounds. Alright, so we're getting quite a cool effect there where it starts out with no space. As we move to the end of the second bar here, it's 100% reverbed, so we don't hear the original piano at all. And then it goes back to being a dry signal. So what you can do is double up. So let's leave this curve here that we've got for the dry wet. Let's add another layer on top. I'm going to click on the decay time. I'm going to put a dot here, one here, and one here. I always like to just click a dot at the default value straight away at all of my points, and then I can go in after and change it, and it won't affect what's happening after or before. So it's another little handy tip there that I found has helped me a lot over the years. Otherwise, let's just undo this, or highlight and delete those. If I start changing this now, let's say I want it up here, now I have to manually go back down to the default value and find where it was, if I can even get it. There, 1.2. But then that changes everything before as well. So you can see the line changes over here. And same thing afterwards. If I change this, it's changing for everything for the rest of the track, or for the rest of this duration of the automation. So what I like to do, make sure you don't highlight that top bit, is just set one at the default value so I know what default value is, and then I can change it afterwards. So I'm going to change the decay time. So at the middle here, I'm going to set to 10 seconds, or around 10 seconds, and before and after, let's do half a second, so 500 milliseconds. So to bring up the curve, if I wanted to change the dry wet, I can either click down here. You can see that curve changes as I click from decay time to dry wet. We now have two curves of automation happening at the same time. Or if you select reverb up here, anything with a red dot next to it has already been automated. So if we open this up, we can see decay time's got automation and dry wet's got automation. And these are all the other things that you can automate just on reverb alone. So let's see how this sounds now. Okay, that's added a little bit more spice to this reverb automation. So instead of just automating dry wet, now the decay time goes all the way up as we reach this middle point here. And then as we get back down to the end here, it's back down to half a second. So it sounds like it's in a lot of space in the middle here. But on each side, it's quite dry. You probably saw there when I selected this, I actually moved it. If you move something and it's already got automation on it, this little orange light will come on, and that tells you now that you've disabled automation, because you can't start tweaking something if you already automated it. What I mean by that is, let's say you've drawn this in, and you want to play this here. Because you've already drawn in half a second here, 10 seconds here, and 5.5 seconds here, you can't decide, oh, I just want to switch this to 10 seconds now here. And you can't do it this way, because now it's just going to disable automation, and you'll hear 13 seconds. So once you enable automation, and I'll turn this back off, re-enable it. Once you start automating stuff, you have to change the values through here, and you can't just click and drag this anymore. So if you wanted this just to be a single value, I suggest just delete automation. So just delete this decay time. And now that little dot next to it has disappeared. You can see this one's still got it. But now you can change decay time as much as you want, and it'll stay like that throughout the whole course of the track. But just be aware, once you do start automating, when you do want to change the duration, you have to do it through your automation because you've already drawn in a curve. You can't just change it through here anymore without disabling automation. Okay, so something to be aware of, just in case you accidentally do it and then you freak out and you're like, oh, why is this all grayed out? And you're not sure why this is on. That's what that is. So if you've noticed, I've been drawing these dots in, and these lines are all quite linear. In Live 10, they introduced curves, so you can actually make things much smoother. So let me just, maybe not, I'll do it on the dry wet actually. Delete this automation. We'll leave this at a couple seconds, and we'll go back to our dry wet automation here. So we have 3 dots here. This one at 0, this one at 100, this one here at 0 again. And it's just a straight line between the two. If you wanted to add a little bit more curve into it, you can just come in here and add more dots. But an easy way to do it is to hold Option or Alt on PC. And you'll see as I hold this, I'll get a little curve next to my mouse, and the whole line will change blue. So if I hold this and click and drag, you see I'm actually creating a curve and it's not so linear anymore. So if I wanted it to slowly rise up, I'll click and drag down. And then I can come over here and do the same to this one. Let me just move this to the middle here. Middle of this note so we can hear it. Let's see what that's doing now. Yeah, you can hear that it's actually quite dry all the way until here, when it gets super reverbed out and then goes back to being close to dry again for the rest of it. So it's just this little point here where it's pretty much 100% reverb and then fades back down. So let's change these curves, make them the opposite way. So doing it this way, it's essentially reverbed for the entire duration of this because the curve is so strong. At the very beginning here, we do get that dry sound because it's down here, but then straight away it goes up to close to 100%. Let's just bring those back down. So if you hold Option and you double click, that will reset it to the straight lines. Okay, so that's a little introduction to automation. So you click to add dots, you click to remove dots, single click, and then you click and drag to move dots around. You can hold Option to add curves in, and then double click while holding Option to revert them back to linear. You can highlight in here and delete automation. Just make sure when you do that you are in automation mode, so this blue light has to be on, and that you're not highlighting this top section as well, because that will delete your clip. Like I was saying, anything that's adjustable in Ableton can pretty much be automated, so this is going to open up a whole new world for your arrangements. What we're going to do now is a couple of exercises before we get into automation on your tracks.